As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
One of the worst performances of my career, and they never doubted it for a second.
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble.
Son of a bitch. He stole my life.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Welcome back to the Shot by Shot podcast, where we're talking today about Brady Corbet's third feature film, The Brutalist. It follows a fictional Hungarian Jewish architect called Laszlo Toth, played by Adrian Brody, who flees Europe in post-World War II to the US to chase the American dream, which since the start has been lauded by critics, since its premiere at Venice Festival, as one of the frontrunners to win Best Picture at this year's Oscars, and it's been one of my most anticipated of the year, as I'm sure will be for everybody. Made only for $10 million, it's certainly an aspirational film trying to recreate the magic of the American epic of the 70s. Not something that we really see every day, especially from a filmmaker that has not exactly ever come close to making something as successful as The Brutalist. Brady Corbet's past films have all been quite polarizing and never really got this much eyes on them. But Oscar, I know you've seen this film twice now, so what did you think of The Brutalist?
Yeah, Brady Corbet is interesting. Obviously, started out as an actor in Michael Haneke film, Lars von Trier, Greg Araki. I mean, that's crazy. I think he's like his physical appearance has changed so much since then that people just don't recognize him. But I grew up watching Thunderbirds 2004, the live action film he stars as the leading role in. Which is hilarious because I've seen that movie way too many times. But yeah, his shift into directing is interesting. I haven't seen his debut, which is Childhood of a Leader, but I have seen Vox Lux. And both share this very direct approach, which I'm pretty sure Childhood of a Leader holds as well. There's such a clear line between kind of cause and effect, like a massive tragedy is like change this person's life, and it in Vox Lux it's a school shooting which changes this pop star played by Natalie Portman, and then this obviously is World War II and concentration camps, which he gets out of and his family do not, and he immigrates to the US. Like you said, I was really anticipating this film. Trailers, I think, had done a pretty good job, marketing especially, but I will come back to the marketing later because I have a bit of a thing to say about that. And yeah, I really didn't know on first watch. I saw it in IMAX in the Printworks in Manchester, which is the second biggest IMAX in the country, which was glorious. And just that opening scene, just the score, the duh 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 duh, and it just goes on forever, and the camera is just, you can hardly tell what's going on, just moving. You got this kind of opening dissolve as well. By the way, we're going into spoilers right away. I guess I'll say it for after my thoughts. And we kind of get this incredible upside down shot of the Statue of Liberty as the kind of the score crescendos, and he like opens the doors, and there's probably the happiest moment of the film. I said in my review is the beginning of both chapters. That is when he arrives, and when he meets his wife at the start of the second half of the film. And there's, like I said, it's an incredibly direct film. The first half does a good job at integrating his direct storytelling into the film very well. You know, there's a lot of archival footage that paints Pennsylvania as this really as the paints the American dream, really, but specifically to Pennsylvania and about their industry and industrial and steel and things like that. And this is like the land of decision. And first half was really fantastic. I think it sets the foundations of this immigrant story that tackles national beliefs, sexuality, and just this relationship between an artist and a patron, and there's this kind of overarching meta reflection on filmmaking itself. That kind of sits around the whole of this film and about the control that artists have over their own work. Unfortunately for me, especially on a second watch, the second half, I think, unironically, the foundations that were set in the first half just completely crumble and deteriorate, and the kind of level of ambiguity that was brought to the kind of, as direct as it was in the first half, there's still a lot of ambiguity around the themes, and Corbett just swaps that for really hollow, straight obviousness in the second half, and it becomes a real mess. It gets really lost in its commentary, and it doesn't know where it wants to go, and we end up with a lot of half-baked ideas that the first half of the film set up so well, and it just leads and just skips across to an unfortunately abrupt end, which is a shame. But yeah, I will get into more of that later.
Yeah, I'll take over from that. I saw it yesterday. It's still fresh on my mind, which is good. I've been thinking about it more. It's probably growing on me, to be honest, which I wasn't expecting. I was a bit worried I'd watch it and not really think much about it, but some of my initial criticisms I had with the epilogue and the second half, I'm starting to see where the vision was a little bit with it. I think it intentionally constructs itself and builds itself up in the beginning. There's a lot of emphasis in the end about the journey and then the destination. And then, so obviously the first half before the intermission is the journey. It's the first film I've seen in 2024 where I got chills from the opening credits. That scene with the bus and the overture just playing. That theme is amazing.
Oh, so good.
And it's interesting to note that that's not present at all in the second half, that little musical theme. I did make a note of that. It's because it's like representing this immigrant, his dreams to carry on his work in America. He achieves it at the end of the first half, and then the second half, it all starts to deconstruct itself a little bit. You have the upper class trying to be controlling with both him and his family. It touches on things like toxic masculinity from the Van Buren, Guy Pearce, who is amazing in this. Probably my shout for best supporting actor, and I think he'll win it. And then the epilogue, it's a little jarring, but it depends how you read it. If you read it as ironic and insincere, I think it's more impactful. If you read it as Zofia, spoilers by the way, Zofia not interpreting it herself, but instead being honest about Van Buren's Laszlo Toth's intentions when constructing the building. It's a little on the nose and too straightforward, but I think she, there's hints of Zionism in the film, which have been discussed before. She goes off to Israel and things like that. I think that's her putting her own political views onto his work. So in a way, even though the presentation of that epilogue with a lecture, I think they're trying to stop the film from ending too abruptly, to be honest, by adding that. But I do kind of like that reading of the film, if you read it like that. But yeah, overall, it does feel like an epic to the extent of an Oppenheimer or a Killers of the Flower Moon, and it's operating on 20th of the budget. So yeah, I was very impressed. It's not quite top 10 of the year, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that's quite a common criticism I'm seeing, is that everybody seems to love the first half, but after that intermission, which I don't personally think it was really needed, intermission. I thought this was a really quickly paced film, but everybody seems to agree that it does kind of drop off after that intermission, going into the second half, where it really is the downfall of the American dream. And yeah, like you were saying, that start where he's coming out of the boat is just, it's so overwhelming. And you really don't know what's really happening. And then just as the music crescendos, like you're saying, when he comes out into that door and you see the Statue of Liberty, which is that is such a iconic kind of place in film for immigrants, as it's almost calling back to straight to Godfather 2. Even some of the shots of the people with their numbers waiting in queues, it's really, there's lots of reference to the Godfather here, and in many ways this kind of does feel like he's trying to make his Godfather, his masterpiece, out of almost nowhere, because I think it's quite crazy to look back on Coppola's career now, where the Godfather really was kind of out of nowhere. Like there's no really like things before that scream that a masterpiece is coming from him. In fact, really the canon of Coppola really starts at the Godfather. There's not really any masterpieces that are lauded before that in his filmography. But yeah, I don't think it really quite reaches anywhere the American epics of There Will Be Blood or Once Upon a Time in America or The Godfather. Um, it's up there at times in some of its cinematic moments, but I don't think it. I do agree that it doesn't land on that second half, and I particularly didn't really like the epilogue either.
The PTA things are earned, but I think it's way more in line with something like The Master than it is There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
The Master's the synopsis of The Master is like a guy haunted by his past World War II veteran crosses paths with a mysterious movement called the Cause, and that is very much in line with the synopsis of this film. And obviously, I think PTA is infinitely better than Corvée, and it pains me so much because the first half of the film is really, really incredible, and you were touching on the ending. I read into the irony of it, like the satirical nature of just spoon feeding everything, and I like that, but it's almost like the ending is like I described it as like a poorly applied bandage, trying to mend the fact that this, like the stance on Zionism throughout the whole film is not like there at all, and it's too ambiguous. And I think this ending is trying to, I like it, as in it's like at least it concludes on it, but it feels like it's like a better late than never kind of thing. That is just we're going to kind of throw this on the end and hope that you'll forget about the fact that this commentary really isn't relevant throughout the second half of the film, because the main role of the daughter is this kind of antithesis to Laszlo's character, who's drawn more into the assimilation of the American lifestyle, and she's his character who is who goes back to Israel and says at the end that it's not, like you mentioned, Daniel, it's not about the journey, it's about the destination, which kind of links to kind of Zionism's whole thing about finding a place for them to live. But it's an interesting ending, but there's not much meat behind it for it to be really, really impactful for me, and it's trying to fill like a hollow shell that kind of came before it, and it unfortunately didn't work for me. And I'm interested because I know Will brought up in our group chat. Do you think that Laszlo Toth was gay? Because I think there are many arguments to say that he was.
I thought that the whole film was kind of hinting towards that when I watched it, which ultimately, I think it doesn't really lead to anything except from the moment in the cave, which I don't really know if I really.
Do you mean
like
Toff
how
or
it's really handled.
Harrison von Buren? Because I read
I
it.
think
Both.
I think because you see one of the first scenes is like there he arrives and he goes like instantly to a brothel, and he's with the sex worker, and he does not want to have sex with her at all. And then you get to the scenes where his wife arrives, and like his wife is like taunting him, like not necessarily like taunting him to like have sex with her, and he is just not going
anywhere, and it's not happening. And I think Van Buren, my interpretation of Van Buren, actually, let me backtrack a bit. So there's that links to it. There's a very important point in the first half of the film where Van Buren and Todd are having a conversation at that party before he asks him to build this big thing. And he asks him about what does your architecture mean to you? And his response is that, is there a better description of a cube than that of its own construction? Basically saying that architecture just speaks for itself. And I think the whole idea of control and that Toth never ever speaks for himself in this film is kind of everything in this film almost lives inside that quote. And in his beliefs, in his desires, he never ever speaks for himself in this film. He is just constantly controlled. And I think the rape scene between Van Buren and Toth is a way of Van Buren speaking on his behalf that he was actually gay. But it's just something that he didn't want to accept in a way. Yeah, and just his control. I think it's obvious his control over him. But yeah, it works better in the first half, and then in the second half, it just becomes too explicit, and it's kind of lost away. And yeah, it's really unfortunate. But those mountains, the marvel, that was just insane. So picturesque, and the way he shoots it is, their relationship is really fascinating as a whole, especially especially in the first half. Just his demand. He says that he doesn't like surprises, and then like when he first presents the model of what it's going to look like, he says, "Oh, this is a massive surprise," and like he doesn't act. He doesn't look like he's disliking it or anything. But no, I think their relationship I like that it set out this kind of labyrinth for those two, but I think that it gets lost within its own labyrinth in the second half, and just ideas are just thrown left, right, and center, and never really done anything with, unfortunately.
Yeah, piggybacking on what you said about the control thing with Von Buren, you like learn at the end, even after this sexual assault, his like masterpiece is still like known to everyone as the Van Buren building. So that really shows that he's still not fighting back even after that. The film does try to juggle too much in the second half. You get like a weird power dynamic in the family that's hinted at, like the father and then his son, and then you get his son with Sophia, where it hints that something happened between them in the garden. I read online. It's not my like something I came up with, but when they learn at the end about the assault, the rape, his Van Buren's son starts like regressing and shouting for his dad like a kid. He's like running around the house, and someone was saying that's like a common sign of like child abuse, like sexual abuse, where someone regresses to that level. Because throughout the film, that his son's like just like his dad, really. He's becoming more and more like his dad. He's not very emotional. He's really controlling, obsessed with money. But then you see that vulnerability when he learns about that. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting angle. But again, the film's so caught up on so many different things, it doesn't really flesh anything out.
Yeah, the ideas that it brings into the second half they just feel a bit diluted, for no better word. Like I love the kind of rise and fall structure that he lays out of the American dream, which it's a very common arc he's very distinctively underlining it with the timing of that intermission right at the halfway point. But yeah, a lot of the characters they're kind of just metaphors and not really people on their own, apart from Brady and Pierce, which kind of makes some of it feel hollow. And that power dynamic is the only one that really interests me. A lot of the stuff that it kind of brings into the second half kind of just don't really. I don't really care to think more about it, and that's kind of led to me not really thinking about this film too much since I've seen it, apart from the kind of striking images, which, in fairness, a lot of them are in the second half. The ones that are stuck in my head, like the most memorable shots for me are still those mines in Italy, like you were saying, and the caves which they shot. Which that's really where the fact that he shot in VistaVision comes into play here. I really can't wait to see those scenes in 70 millimeter. But yeah, that's another thing. A lot of films have been projected in 70 millimeter recently. I feel like almost as a way to try and get. I feel like the hype of people coming back to the theater post COVID is they need to make an event out of it to get people to come off streaming and go to theater. But I did like that it was like it was a unique. It's not like any of the other films that have done it recently because obviously VistaVision, nobody shot in that. I think since the 60s. Obviously, there's some great American films shot in that, like Vertigo or North by Northwest are always the ones I think of when I think of that format. But it's kind of been a dead format for a lot of decades now, and a lot of the moments in that second half really make use of it. I think particularly that overhead shot of the train is another one that's stuck in my head. It's a really striking shot. I think it creates such a weird effect where it almost feels like the screen's like stretching. I don't even know how to explain it. It's weird and it just sticks in your head. It's because it is an important moment in the kind of arc of Toph as well in the story because it's the literal derailing of the train that destroys the supplies that they have for their project, but it also is the start of the kind of derailment of his singular vision. And when they really come in and start like messing with that and like taking away his budget, and he has to use his own money to even get the project finished in his eyes. And it's also kind of the start of the derailment of the film for me. Kind of that's after that is where really a lot of the like story elements kind of don't completely work for me at times. And yeah, going back to the epilogue, I know we've talked about it a lot, but I think it does work thematically, but kind of filmmaking wise, I didn't like it. It kind of goes into almost digital like effects of the transitions and stuff, which it feels like a corporate video, which again does work thematically. But yeah, it kind of feels like some of the movie kind of feels like it's stuck in this biopic structure, even though it's not a biopic because it's fictional. But particularly kind of just him showing up older with Brody, all in makeup. It kind of just as the traditional kind of biopic ending. It made me think of Oppenheimer when he gets the award and like Cillian Murphy's in like all makeup, and it kind of pushes like his award push because the kind of makeup goes along with the best actor. That's probably a bad reading of that scene about him being in makeup. Because it didn't really work, but that's what it made me think of.
Yeah, it's too
Yeah, it is.
soppy and safe and conventional compared to like
Yeah,
everything else in the film. And yeah, it's like analog like style, which is just really weird
yeah,
compared to the rest of it, which is VistaVision. Um, I think he was just too scared to end the film the way he thought it was going to end, and then suddenly like an epilogue appears. I mean, it would be an abrupt ending, but the issue is with that epilogue for audiences that don't read into films on a deeper level, they'll just take that at like face value, that epilogue, and it's basically
Exactly.
you're just being explained to, you're just being told and not shown anything. So yeah, I understand why it was included, but for most people, it's probably going to leave a sour taste in the mouth.
Mm. Yeah, I think the second half is so interesting because, like I mentioned, like the whole film is like a reflection of filmmaking itself. You know, just artists in general having lack of control over their work, and the second half is so interesting because at times it feels like it's purposely deconstructing itself, like as a reflection on artists and Corbett as a filmmaker. But it almost his like ego of it being that reflection of an artist like gets in the way of a story about a Hungarian Jewish immigrant, which it at times like it doesn't seem right that this should be the story that's being overshadowed, especially in the second half. And first half, fine. I think they work in tandem perfectly, but it really doesn't work. And you know, I mentioned at the start about some of the marketing. You hear just great, monumental. I have never heard that word so much. Every review that has ever used that, A24, Universal, are all over it. Monumental, monumental, monumental. And it is, I don't know, it just, and people are like, oh, this is like a new cinematic language. And I'm like, really? Is this like the me? I don't know, it just feels really empty in a way. Like the words that people are using, like those words frequently, and it's
New
really
cinematic
interesting.
language is a weird thing to say about this
It
because it feels like
really
it's almost going
is.
backwards. Not
I
not in a bad way,
agree.
but like he's going back to like traditional types of filmmaking. It doesn't feel like he's pushing new
Mm.
ground.
And like the ideas of the film, like American Dream, is nothing new at all. And I think it's interesting. I like that he tried to, like I said previously, he tries to incorporate so much into this dream about this one character. But his ego, I think, just it really does get in the way of everything. Um, and he co-wrote it with Mona Fastfold, I think, as well. I don't think they work together on any other projects, but it's similar
His
with
wife,
Vox.
I think, didn't she write Vox Lux? I thought they wrote
Mm,
all the
are
films
they
together.
together?
I've not
Maybe
seen the person he
let's have
wrote
a
it
look.
with. I'm pretty sure it's his wife.
Is it Mona Fastfold? I know that's her name. No, this is no. She co-wrote Childhood of a Leader, but not Vox Lux. Vox Lux was all
Ah, okay.
him. I haven't seen Childhood of a Leader yet. It's such an interesting style of writing because the directing was incredible, and the scale just is there in the second half. It just, obviously the writing just lets it down, and he just falls into his habits again of this just shallow, streamlined nature. And Vox Lux is kind of the same, but I'd be interested in going back to that one after seeing this one. And we see in this kind of early beginnings this kind of assimilation versus like the newly immigrated with his cousin, who is like this guy who is lying because about his company name, and just because people like a family driven business, and he's already kind of assimilated into this lifestyle. And he doesn't agree with it, and he's like, your name's not Miller, and you don't have any sons. And we see it with his wife, played by Felicity Jones, in the second half of the film. She's like, oh, like the first thing she says to get him is like, oh, I'll dye my hair, I'll change your color. And she is just to Van Buren at that first dinner. She's like, oh, like to Tottle, like, oh, why can't you be like this? Like, she is already this perfect, but that move, as her wife just doesn't play much of a role beyond like taunting him in a sexual nature, and being this figure of a already assimilated woman in a way. And it really doesn't work. She's just confined to a wheelchair and not used that much, and it does feel like there have been sections cut out. And yeah, like I said, it's the same with Sophia. Sophia is just background. She doesn't speak really at all, and it just leads up to this ending which counts on them so much, but there's no foundations there for it to be effective, even in its irony.
She's
And
kind of just the like formation of kind of his grief and regret because she has osteoporosis. That's why she's in a wheelchair. I don't remember the reason, but I feel like it was
I know,
linked to him leaving her in Hungary.
yeah,
Yeah, and then when it leads to like this scene where she confronts, she goes to the house and confronts him for raping Laszlo, I feel like
Mm.
that last like 10 minutes of the film just feels cut up pretty much. It's kind of jumping from scene to scene, and we're not even given like, I guess it could work, but we're not really given any inclination that Laszlo even admits to her that he was raped. She kind of just shows up at the house with this knowledge.
Mm.
Yeah,
It kind of just feels cut up.
and you don't even see like
Right.
emotional impact on Laszlo that much either, from memory.
No.
I'm pretty sure it cuts from. When does it cut between that 10 minutes? Is it like she's in the
Is it the
hospital?
hand job scene?
She,
Like the second one?
Oh, is
she
it?
overdoses on
Oh
the
yeah, no, yeah, she's at the
opium.
Yeah,
hospital.
which is such
Yeah.
a weird
Yeah,
transition, I think, between two scenes.
it is. And then Van Buren goes missing, and then we end that second chapter on an upside down cross. And I think that this film has like, with its assimilation, it brings in this kind of the already massive foundation of Christianity against Judaism. You know, this massive place of worship, this chapel that they are building, this 4-in-1 building, and then the kind of the synagogue and the place of worship that he goes to is like this in the back streets. It's really small and kind of run down. And yeah, I think those ideas are quite lost in the second half of the film.
I quite like the kind of way that his architecture was kind of melded with, because they start adding. I think they make him add a library and a, is that bowling alley?
Gymnasium.
Yeah, Jim.
Gymnasium. The bowling alley was the one that he like, people asked, "Oh, are you doing anything at the moment?" And he's like, "I'm building a bowling alley."
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of, Ryan, you brought about the derailing of the trains on this like direct line. There's a lot of images of like straight lines in this film. Like, you know, we got the shots on the transport on the roads, and the bowling alley itself as an image. And yeah, it's really interesting the way that those are used. And then we don't really see it after the train derails off of the tracks.
We get a
Yeah.
great shot of, I think it's miniatures, I'm assuming, where they're kind of constructing the building on top of the hill. That's a great shot. I do just, yeah, that's like when the film is most interesting. I think when you get the power dynamic between them, the kind of financier and the artist trying to keep his art uncompromised and keep to a singular vision. Which I do like kind of how that conflict starts with the train. It does sit sort of as an interesting companion piece with another film from this year, Megalopolis, which they're both architects fighting to bring their own vision to life. And I think they're both kind of the text of the film rather than it being subtext. Like, they're both very linked to the filmmakers behind the film. This one being a different case of a filmmaker where Brody's kind of still in that scenario. He's probably still going to be fighting with the studios behind these films, but whereas the other one's kind of like a last hurrah of a legendary filmmaker, like going on his own. But I do really like the way it links to a singular vision and the artist behind it. That was my favorite aspect.
I'll bring it up because it was going to be brought up eventually. This film uses AI. It doesn't
Oh
use
yeah.
it. It's very ironic considering the theme of the film is about like human creation, and that I was really like, before it came out what they used AI for, I was like devastated because this had like sold itself as like a 10 million budget, humble, like American epic about artistry, and then I find out they've used AI, and then it came out that it was mainly to help the authenticity of the accents, the Hungarian accents. And that's
It wasn't. Yeah, I'm almost certain. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost certain it wasn't the Hungarian accents. It was the Hungarian speaking scenes
the
when they
language.
speak
Yes, correct.
Hungarian.
I've heard it was only one
Yeah.
scene as well. I don't know if that's
so
true.
that does soften the blow, but it sets the precedent as the issue.
It does.
And there's like conversations about Brody being excluded. He won't be, but people are saying he should be. I think it's so minor that I don't that it's not something that ruins his performance. But like I said, there is a precedent that needs to be set. We've either got to go all in or not being all.
Do we think that there are like other performances that like I'm sure other performances have like touches up on their accents and things like that in other films, or do we think that's not the case? It just depends on what comes to light.
I think there will be. There's no
Amelia
obligation.
Perez did.
There's no obligation
Yeah,
to
they
be
did Emilia
transparent
Perez.
about it, which is the issue. I think we need an obligation, like some sort of law, where if you've used AI, just say where you've used it. I'd rather studios be honest
Yeah,
about it, to be honest.
It does
yeah,
kind
I
of
agree.
fall into a grey area where it's like, is it really as bad as like it's not generative AI? It's kind of just using it as a tool rather. It's not replacing anything. It's just another tool that they can use in post production. I don't really see it as like
Yeah,
the
and
end
it's
of the
probably not
world.
taking anyone's jobs either. Which,
True, but like John just said, it does hinder like the authenticity of it in a sense.
Yeah,
And
it's not. There's no purity of it was caught in camera and
yeah,
it wasn't like done on the day. It was manufactured in a way.
and but what was I going to say? AI has become a buzzword, and I am very anti AI at the moment.
Same.
Just want generative AI, especially,
Mhm.
and just what it's doing and the attitude towards it. But it does spark a lot of debate, and people like you hear the word AI instantly, and people are like, oh, it's just manic panic. And a lot of people don't do their research. And I'm not defending the use of it, but there's definitely levels to it. And I don't think it should be used, but this is one of the lesser cases of it, considering what we've had in the past couple of years. Late Night with the Devil. Marvel, people completely forgot that Marvel literally did a whole generative AI intro for Secret Invasion. The whole
Oh, yeah.
intro were generative AI.
It was very clearly generative AI as well. It was horrible.
People like, oh yeah, but it fits with the theme of the TV show. Shut up. Please just shut up. First of all, that show is one of the worst shows of the decade. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but people are like, oh, should be disqualified. Yeah, but like you said, Emilia Perez, please, by all means, disqualify that film. please, please, please.
That's a whole other like thing that is like so blatant. I'm hoping they do something about it, but I don't think they will, unless enough lobby.
Yes.
We need Brazil to start lobbying hard because
Severe Gascon was being exposed on social media for her horrendous tweets like 5 years ago. And I'm really hoping they get really big backlash, because at this point it's a fight between these two for best picture, I think. Just anything but Emilia Perez, please. Even if
Our use of AI feels worse as well because it's helping her sing in a musical. That's a lot worse than helping someone get an accent right.
It doesn't even help from what I've heard. It sounds awful from the bits I've heard.
Yeah, the singing is not good anyway, but I'm guessing a real clip of her without it, and it was even worse.
Yes, some of the nominations for I'd gone a bit of a tandem for things like Emilia Perez. It sometimes feels like they don't even care. They don't even look into things. They're like, oh, this is a film that's gaining steam. We're just going to throw us in some other categories. Like hair and makeup is awful. The wigs in Emilia Perez are absolutely horrendous. The facial hair on the character before
The cartel
she has the
leader.
operation. It looks awful. And there's this I've seen a bit of discourse online that I agree with. Like with a lot of categories, it feels like they nominate things that there's just the most of. Like editing and production design is always just the films with the most production design, the biggest, most lavish things, and the most kind of obviously edited things, if that makes any sense. Like the flashiest editing is like, we're just going to throw that to you. They don't care about what it means to the storytelling aspects, which is what it should be. They're just solely focused on what is the biggest, and it is so. And cinematography as well is another one that is awful, especially this year. But yeah, I think The Brutalist has been nominated. I'm trying to think of anything I wouldn't nominate it for.
I think
It's been nominated for screenplay.
I
would
like
not.
Honora's editing more, but I think Brutalist is very well edited.
It is
out of the nomination.
fantastically edited.
Because the
That
pacing
brings me
is
into my
incredible.
It is. Oh my goodness! That second time, I couldn't believe it. It is so annoying that just the writing is just so detrimental to that film, and the editing I love. I think it's really fantastic. There's a lot on kind of dreams and visions in this film about, and it kind of links into the control again, but it becomes more obvious in the second half that. Van Buren, he has like moments like, oh, I'm having a vision or something. And then in the second half, it's a lot more explicit about Felicity Jones's character. It's like, oh, I've seen your future. I know what's going to happen to you. And it's delivered in a way that like there was this already building sense of control, but like we know that in the second half, like it's just really explicit, like, oh, he's like, even his wife is control, is like almost like controlled because he's fated now because she knows what happens to him, because like, oh, I've seen in that scene, one of the first scenes together they have in the second half. But yeah, and the editing like reflects that slightly, because there's like, I swear there's like small like sharp cuts to the future in some of the sequences. There's that scene where his cousin and her wife, there's like this American woman who is this like real figure of judgmental. Laszlo doesn't want to dance with her, and she is like this figure of like just US nationalism in a way. And he just refused to dance it. And then I swear there's like bits of editing that like jump forward like slightly and then cut back. Maybe I'm imagining things, but I swear I've seen that a couple of times in the film. But yeah, I love some of the cuts in that film. They're brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's got as good as pacing as Oppenheimer does, and Oppenheimer's like all over the place. It's like so erratic, that editing. This one's a lot more subtle, but yeah, it's one of the quickest long films I've seen, and I didn't even like love it. But yeah, I think I do prefer Honora's editing, but I would not be mad if Brutalist won, because the other nominations aren't anywhere near. Like, I like Conclave, but I wouldn't say it's best editing. And then the other two are just Wicked and Emilia Perez, which I don't really want either to win anything. So
yeah, I'd pick Honora out of those. But what do you think about the acting nominations? Because I feel like, not to be harsh on Felicity Jones, but I feel like she's kind of just been carried along with the film here. I don't think her performance kind of stands out particularly.
I agree.
And she's been nominated in the past, which helps.
You should have had Adrian Brody was good. He plays like this kind of feeble and emotional character quite well. Who's kind of
I think he completely disappears into the character.
He does, yeah. As someone said, it's like
really
top tier smoking acting as well. Brilliant. Bring it back. We need like the coolest guys who like another Marcello Mastroianni again, like just looked like the coolest guy ever.
Yeah.
While smoking. I thought Joe Alwyn was brilliant. He had, like Daniel brought up, he's like this really immature reflection of his father, but uncontrolled, like more uncontrollable and volatile with his emotions and his I don't know. He's British, isn't he, Joe Alwyn? I really like him as an actor. I think he's British.
I don't actually know who he was before this.
Did you not know who Joe Alwyn was? That's crazy. He was in Kinds of Kindness.
Yeah, I don't remember much of that film at this point.
I don't.
It's kind of disappeared from my mind.
I know he is English. Yeah, he's really great actor. He's in Film Watch of the Week was Stars at Noon as well with Margaret Qualley. But yeah, I really like him as an actor. I thought he was really good in this. He was one of the standouts for me, definitely.
He looked like he could play like Baron Trump or someone. He looked like a Trump family member. If there's ever Baron Trump 100%. Biopic, I'd cast him because he plays like a pompous like dickhead really well. I think Guy Pearce maybe best performance of the year. Is like really, really good in this. He steals like every scene. I don't know, maybe not best, but I want him to win in that category. Though I do think Sing Sing got a bit snubbed there as well. I can't remember his name, but he's really good. The supporting guy in the Sing Sing.
I'm forgetting it too as well.
Clarence Macklin.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he was incredible.
Yeah, he was really good.
Pierce kind of feels like almost he's becoming that like more traditional Oscar winning performance. It feels more like a lead, not in the way that Culkin feels like it, or the Kieran Culkin is a lead, but it just feels like a more presence in the film. He really stands out amongst other supporting actors. And I think this is the best of his career, honestly. He's not really an actor that's stood out to me much. I wouldn't say I love him outside of this. Like there's like Memento, LA Confidential is like the only really things that come to my mind when I think of him. Or Peter Wayland in the Prometheus prequels. Which he's kind of playing like another capitalist that's kind of just using people like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is by far his best performance, I think. Maybe even Adrian Brody's best performance as well.
Have you seen The Pianist yet?
I haven't.
It's very. I can't believe you knew he was in Pianist. It's very. The film is very similar to this. To be honest, his performance is really similar in The Pianist. I'd say it's as good, and that's what he won like awards for. I prefer him in this mainly because I just slightly prefer The Brutalist to The Pianist. But yeah, I'm looking at the best actor in a supporting role nominees. Now I've seen The Brutalist. It's stacked this year. Edward Norton looks like the odd one out, to be honest, but I've not seen A Complete Unknown. Jeremy Strong is really win that in The Apprentice. I think Kieran Culkin will win, but he's not my favourite. And Yuri Borisov in Anora is also amazing, and who I want to win, because I want Anora to win everything. But I don't think he'll do too well.
There should be another Anora nomination though. That should be Karen Karagoulian as well. He should be in there.
Yeah.
I think the boys
got a nomination.
The boys in Nickel Boys I thought were incredible. Edward Norton I don't care about Edward Norton or Jeremy Strong in there. Sebastian Stan was nominated for the wrong performance. In my opinion, I thought he was better in A Different Man, but I'm still really happy to see him there because I think he's just setting up such a fantastic career for himself, and he's got a film with a Palme d'Or winning director, the guy who made 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days, whatever. I think 3. I can't remember what it's. 4 months, 4 weeks, 3 days, 2 hours, something like that. Anyway, really, really incredible film. You should watch it. Won Palme d'Or, and he's got a film coming out with that director soon. But yeah, Guy Pearce would probably be my pick for best supporting actor. If out of the nominees, but yeah, it's going to be Kieran Culkin.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's got a strong package, the best picture, which if Emilia Perez is the alternative, then I'd like it to win. There's not a lot of options out there.
If I put money on it, it'd be Jeremy Strong or Kieran Culkin. I think they're the front runners of that. I know The Apprentice is controversial, but I think
Kieran's got it just because.
I think Kieran's got it.
He's a lead in a supporting category. It's not really fair.
And he got the Golden Globe, yeah. So I do think he'll get it, but yeah, he's definitely not my fit. He's probably like 4th out of those, and I've not even seen A Complete Unknown, so he's last. But he's very good in a real thing.
I don't know. Well, just as I've said that, the big news outlets have just started to pick up on the Carla Sophia Gascon tweets and are like just putting them out there. Variety have just started like actually tweeting the translations of them and just said she's going to come under fire. So hopefully this is the start of the Emilia Perez downfall.
Audiard's not helping himself either, saying that Spanish is like
that man is a rat.
He said it was
Oh
like
my goodness.
the language of like
Spanish is
third world countries or something.
Yeah, a poor person's language. He is.
Yeah, crazy.
It's horrendous. Yeah, that cast is cursed. It is so cursed.
Mm. I wouldn't mind Zoe Saldana just picking up the word, but the rest, please, just kick them out of the lead in these categories.
How is it in editing and cinematography as well?
Cinematography is
Let
just
alone
like a joke.
editing. It is
It's an
so
ugly
ugly
film.
and so horrendously edited.
Does that mean I don't have to watch it if it gets disqualified? Oh, that I've been putting off Wicked and Amelia Perez forever. I'm gonna have to watch them eventually.
And she started to beef with Fernando Torres as well.
That's a dangerous game.
Fernando
Torres.
Is that a name? Is that a name?
It's not Fernando. Yeah.
My bad.
The Brazilians will be all over Amelia Perez as well. And
Fernando Torres, yeah.
Imagine I'm Still Here wins Best International now.
I hope it does.
Oh yes.
Just for the Brazilians.
The Ariana Grande stands and the Brazilians have been just joining everybody. It's just like the mass Amelia Perez hate. It is really, really funny.
Yeah.
But the things you said have been absolutely horrendous, and this award season as a whole is just the
draining.
Worst thing
just
ever.
Stan Moores and horrible films.
I generally think this is one of the worst Best Picture lineups we've had in years.
Yeah, it's definitely the worst of the last 3 years.
I'm Still Here, Honora, and Nickel Boys are the only 3 films I consider great out of the 10, and I've seen all of them.
Yeah, that's kind of fair. Like Complete Unknown's like up there probably once I see it, and whereas that would be like Elvis nominated in 2022. Like that was like clearly the worst one of the lineup, but it wasn't even bad. But like that would be like in the top half of this year. So rough lineup.
It's ridiculous.
I'm surprised Nickel Boys got in, to be honest. I thought they were just going to ignore it, but it deserves.
They did ignore it for everything else, pretty much.
They did, yeah, which is why it's so weird. It's got Best Picture. I mean, it's obviously not going to win.
Sing Sing got eliminated somehow.
Yeah, the substance getting in is cool. It's not awful, but compared to like 22, 23, 24, ridiculous. I think 22 was its peak. I still think 2022 is the best of this decade, but 23 is very good.
Same.
24 was good as well. I just wish Amelia Perez and Wicked did not exist. So we could just...
yeah, there's great films there to put in. Like it could be a great lineup.
I'd have Trapped there genuinely just because.
Yeah, based.
I'm kind of surprised Gladiator got overlooked just because it's Ridley. But they're a bit hot and cold, the Academy, with Ridley sometimes, because Napoleon got quite a few nominations from memory.
Yeah. I think, it's usually just production design costume. I don't think he's ever got, in recent times, any big nominations.
Well, Dune's got that treatment this year. Like, it's got, costume and production. It's got Best Picture, obviously. It's really not got as many awards as I expected.
Nosferatu kind of stole all of Ridley's easy nominations.
Yeah.
Kicked it out.
I'm glad Dune didn't get editing or screenplay because it didn't deserve either.
Very happy. To be fair, I kind of agree with that, but I like Dune, you don't.
Yeah.
I'm really happy.
Any last thoughts on Brutalist?
It is worth the 4 hours of your day. It flies by. The intermission I'd rather have just not had, but
it didn't need to be there.
No, it did not.
It didn't need to be there.
It's only
because
10 minutes longer than Killers of the Flower Moon. Nah, it didn't need an intermission.
No. The runtime, the 3 hours and 35 minutes includes the intermission. So the runtime of the film is 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Wait, is it? Oh, I thought it was still 3.5. Oh, okay. So it was the exact same runtime as Killers of the Flower Moon.
Exactly, and in a way,
the intermission is actually on the present.
The intermission ruins the pacing of a film.
And I've seen people justify it by saying that it kind of distinctly like separates the two halves thematically, but Honora was able to do that seamlessly in the film as well. Just from the film that was this year, they didn't have to split it up and tell you like this is when it's changing.
Yeah, and they could have done it anyway because the transition is like an editing montage of like steel being made. You could have just
exactly.
seamlessly cut to that. But I don't know. To be fair, I use the intermission, so I'm complaining. But I did get up and go
I
to the
did.
toilet and stuff. So
I
Yeah, I
didn't go
used
to
it
the
just because it was
toilet.
there.
I didn't. I just got up and walked around. I just stretched my legs and that was it.
Yeah,
That
I
was
might
the
change my
only
mind
thing.
once I watch this in 70mm and it's in like an uncomfortable seat in a theater because I watched this in a recliner seat, so it's easy to say that it was easy watching.
Yesterday, I was in a cinema that had literally no leg room, but I had space. I had no seat left and right of me, so that was lucky. But even then, I was fine. But if I had had people to the side of me, then maybe would have had a problem. Especially because I've got such long legs as well, is not fun. But yeah, if you ever go to London Film Festival at Royal Festival Hall, the Killers of the Flower Moon there in those seats was brutal. It was
Yeah,
brutal.
you need to
And I
rewatch
still
it.
haven't
I
seen
don't think
that.
you've
I
rewatched
know,
it since then, have you?
I haven't. But yeah, I overall fantastic first half, just let down by an annoyingly destructive second half. Yeah, a bit disappointed, but
What ratings did you give it? I still have this. It's like in the top 10 of my year or just on the outside of it possibly on rewatch.
I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because the first half is too good not to give it a positive rating, I think, and I think that's overall where I sit. Even though I really did not like the second half. And the both films I've seen from his, I give 2 stars. No, not 2 stars, 3 stars. Sorry. So I do really want to see Childhood of a Leader. I'll probably watch that in the next week. But his next film is another immigrant story. It's about Chinese immigration. Apparently, it's going to be a horror film, so that's going to be interesting.
Ooh. And also a period piece as well.
Yes. Yeah. I the thing is, even though the first 2 films I've seen so far I haven't loved, I just thought they were fine. I think he's going to be a filmmaker that I'm just going to be fascinated to see because his direction and the images he's been putting on screen have been really challenging and fascinating, and his writing just lets him down really, really badly. And yeah, we'll see what the future has in store for him.
I rated it a 4. I've got it 11th on the 2024, so just outside the top 10. I need to, with films I've just watched, I need to give it like a week and then it'll get moved around a bit. I don't think it will get into my top 10. I don't think it will fall off too hard either. It's definitely going to stay top 20. It's like a very comfortable 4. I wouldn't say it's a low or high 4. I think the first half was tracking like a 5 at one point, but then the second half's like a 3 at points. So I went down the middle because it's really hard to rate a film when it's like that. I'd watch it again. Like I'd be happy to watch it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I also gave it a 4. It's kind of went down in time after thinking about it. So I'm interested to see it in 70mm in 2 weeks to see if it holds up or is even better. But yeah, just in that kind of like a 10-ish range of my year. But it'll probably move about once I rewatch it. But yeah, we're going to go into our top 5 watches of the week. We're going to do the whole month of new watches since we haven't done it in at least a month, I think. We've not done it. So yeah, Daniel, you want to start?
Yes. I'm cheating. I'll get it out of the way. I'll go for a TV show, but it is movie length. I watched it all in one sitting. It's 2.5 hours. Fede Alvarez. It's called Coles. It's like it's sort of like you could literally just listen to this as a podcast. You could like go on a run or something and just listen to it. It's like an audio book. It's just there's no visuals except for the subtitles of these phone calls. And the first episode, they're about 15-minute episodes. You have absolutely no context to what's happening. You just know there's some sort of apocalyptic event happening where these characters are interacting with, and then the events of the first film first like episode start to unravel throughout each episode, and you get a better understanding of this weird sci-fi horror thing that's occurring. You've got to use your imagination. If you don't have like a very active imagination, you might not get much out of this. But I think, yeah, this might be my favorite Alvarez thing, and no one's heard of it. It's got like 5K logs. I think they just threw it on Apple TV. It takes a lot of writing talent to make a 2.5 hour show without any visuals and it be as impactful as it did. Because I've got like ideas in my head of things that were happening that still stick with me in a weird way. So yeah, if you've got like 2.5 hours instead of watching a film, you want to watch a TV show, I'd recommend that.
Is it horror?
Cool.
It is horror. It's like sci-fi horror. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. My let me just I've got my thing up one moment. Okay, so my number 5 is a film called First Cow, directed by Kelly Reichardt, whose films I've been trying to watch a few more of. I've seen 3 now because she has a new film coming out this year called The Mastermind with Josh O'Connor, which I'm very excited for. Sounds really cool. But yeah, this is definitely the best film I've watched of hers so far. We did like a watch party for Wendy and Lucy. Do you remember that? The dog one.
It was
which is the first one that it was a really good film. And then this is the second one I watched. Really, really fantastic film. About set in 1820s America on the Oregon Trail, and about a man who meets a Chinese immigrant who are both seeking fortune. They team up to steal steal milk from a prize cow to make a baked goods out of. And Reichardt is such a tranquil approach to her filmmaking, and it is such a calm film, but it's and it still manages to savor every bit of like friendship connection that have built between these two. And I was so locked in, and I was so invested in their relationship and their just chances of survival and trying to make a living for themselves. And it's so beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous film. And yeah, thought it was absolutely brilliant. So that's my number 5.
Nice. Wait, what did you give that?
4.5 out of 5.
Nice. My number 5 is War of the Worlds by Steven Spielberg, which is, I think it's one of his lowest rated on Letterboxd, so I was intrigued to see it. It's a remake as well of, I think it was in the 50s they made it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, just, I feel like his run in the 2000s is generally quite underrated in general, I think, to begin with. But especially after Fabelmans, and it kind of recontextualizes, I think, a lot of his films, with the whole thing about his parents getting divorced and how that kind of ties into a lot of the themes in his movies. And I think this is one of the ones where it's like very obvious, with the knowledge of that. And I think I just really loved the relationship between Tom Cruise and this and these kids. And yeah, I think Spielberg just effortlessly always kind of adds more to a movie than it just being a fun blockbuster. I think he's one of the best ever at doing that. Just it's full of these like mini wonders. Like the lighting's amazing in this one. I think his style in the 2000s is really unique. Like you can just instantly tell it. You can tell it's from the 2000s, but it's just like this unique, like Spielbergian-esque style kind of from that era. And it's almost a horror film at times. Honestly, the sound design is pretty crazy. But yeah. And I also understood the Scary Movie parodied one of the scenes in this, and I never understood it, so I was happy to understand the references for that now. But yeah, David Cope is a great writer. His relationship with Spielberg is, I don't think they've ever missed. Apart from maybe if they don't, I don't remember if he did one of the Jurassic Park sequels.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
he did.
apart from, I mean, that's still a decent film, but apart from that, it's usually like a really great film. But yeah, I give that a 4 out of 5.
He has written the new one, the Gareth Edwards directed one.
Oh yeah, so
that is
It's interesting. I have a bit more hope than I have for the other Jurassic World films because those were all rubbish.
Gareth Edwards, like his
Yeah.
Godzilla film was heavily influenced by Jurassic Park as well. You could tell at times.
And he is a capable director. It's just his the scripts that he's been working on have been let him down, have let down his films, and co-op writing this has got me intrigued. Very, very intrigued. But yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, when I think like post 9/11 film, I think the first film that pops in my head is War of the Worlds. It's like Spielberg
it's
doing that.
blatantly like 9/11.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
it's really good. I agree with your rating as well. I think next I'll go with Ikiru, which is fourth. I thought it was going to be like The Banker, the best first watch of the month, to be honest. I watched it it was my first log of the year. I know it's like blasphemy to criticize Kurosawa, but I did not love the last act. I think it's a little bit too much telling and not showing. When all the businessmen are in that room and they're like, they are having meltdowns, and it's fun to watch. They realize all this bureaucracy, they're not really living like Kenji was, who like at the end builds this playground, and you see the impact he's had on so many people instead of just staying in this complete cycle of nothing being done and passing responsibility onto other people. The whole film though is incredible. I can see why it's 15th of all time on Letterboxd. Kurosawa just completely I think his entire filmography is in the top 250, to be honest. I need to explore more. I've not watched Ran yet, that's the big one, but I feel like I need to deepen my bag a little bit more before I watch that. His films that just require such the perfect mood and like I want to give my full attention to those films though, so I don't want to just rush into it. But yeah, Ikiru is very good. I'll watch it again, and I'm curious to see how Spike Lee's going to do doing High and Low, because he didn't go that well last time when he touched an Asian film.
True, but I have hope for this. Because I think the cast is something that he's so much more comfortable working with, and just it from the sounds of it and the cast, it feels like it's something that's going to be drastically different. And he said himself, it's not a remake, it's a reinterpretation. And the film obviously is called Highest to Lowest. Like it at least has a different title, and that it's interesting. And it's actually it's highest to lowest as well. It's a number 2. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I am excited for that film. But for my number 4, I have a film that I saw in the cinema, which was Visconti's Rocco and His Brothers, film I've been meaning to watch for a while. And it was playing a cinema in Manchester. I think the BFI done a curated thing on it. And it was playing near me, which I was very happy about. And yeah, 4K restoration, and went to see it, and I thought it was absolutely incredible. It's a film about an immigrating family from the southern parts of Italy into Milan, and Visconti focuses a lot in his films on this kind of economic divide. There's film called The Leopard, which another one I've seen, about the unification of Italy. Really fantastic film, which I do know a lot about, surprisingly. And there's so much about economic turmoil and Milan, about this image of wealth and fashion in this film, and the ignorance of the rich, but it's so woven into this kind of tense thriller of family drama and love. And this film is split into 5 chapters, each one named after one of the brothers, as it kind of shifts its focus throughout. And so captivating. The blocking is unbelievable in this film. There's a lot of kind of sequences in apartments where there's so many people just crammed in, these families, and the blocking is just unbelievable. And the way his camera just moves around each of them, and I thought it was just absolutely fantastic and well worth everybody's time. Lovely 3 hours in the cinema that was.
I think I'm seeing that next week or 2 weeks.
Nice.
I think it was re-release. I've heard people
Really,
compare
really
it to The
good.
Brutalist as well, actually.
Yes, well, like I said, it's about immigration, but this is immigration within a country, within Italy, and it does play on family dynamics a lot. But this is a lot better than The Brutalist.
Mm. Yeah, I'm excited to see that. My number 4 is the original King Kong from 1933, which is, oh my god, the special effects in this are so crazy. Like the stop motion is out of this world. Like I know people say this a lot, but watching it back then, it would have just been incredible, mind blowing. Because I grew up on Peter Jackson's King Kong. Obviously, I love that film. I honestly still like the remake more than this. That's how high I hold up Peter Jackson's version. But it's very clear after watching this why he was probably enthralled with this movie, because it really is just like he's one of those guys that are just like pushing digital effects forward with his remake, and then just kind of Lord of the Rings as well in parts. And this is just like a landmark in special effects and stop motion, like matte paintings and miniatures. It's just the stuff they do in this is crazy. And I think it's probably the best monster movie from that kind of era that I've seen, or the Monsterverse. Even better than maybe the original Godzilla. I'd maybe put it above that. King Kong's actually weirdly like kind of similar to Godzilla in the American remakes. He's kind of made as this like sympathetic or not villain, sympathetic like ape, whereas he's pretty much just like a straight up villain and monster in this, where he straight up kills people. It's very different at times to Peter Jackson's version. But yeah, I really recommend this because it's crazy that it came out like 20 years before Godzilla, and like the special effects are like even better somehow. But yeah, highly recommend check that one out. One of my favorites from the 30s.
Does that have dialogue? I don't even know. Or is it silent?
It does, yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
I need to watch that. What next? There might be overlap. I'm not sure when Ryan watched it, but I'll go Point Break for free. I think we all just ended up watching it. Well, a lot of us ended up watching this in our group chat because it generated hype. It takes a lot for me to put an action film in like my top 5 anything, but Catherine Bigelow was cooking with this one. It's like the right balance of humor and there is cheesiness to it, but there's also really good. Like every action set piece is really good. Even from like the skydiving scenes, I think do use green screen, but they look good. Well, some of it does.
It's real, and then there's green screen for the close-ups of Keanu Reeves, but like everybody else is like genuinely jumped out of the plane. And, like...
Okay. That's good. Yeah, surfing's an interesting way to take this, but the vibes of LA are definitely there. And then when they're robbing the bank, there's a lot of good personalities there. The guy impersonating Nixon's really fun to watch. It's just a really simple premise, cleanly made action film. Keanu Reeves sort of fits that surfer boy aura that he had in the 90s. So yeah, I feel like a lot of people have seen this, but if you haven't, you should watch it because it's one of the best action films I've seen, probably.
I agree.
Nice. Where is it? My number 3 is a Chinese film called Long Day's Journey into Night, directed by a Chinese director called Bi Gan, who has a third feature coming out this year called Resurrection, which is a film I am insanely excited for. His third feature, and this is his second one. This film just left me stunned. It's a film about a man kind of searching for a woman he loved and someone who's never able to forget, and it leads into kind of dream sequences and perpetual dreams, and this film is a hour-long unbroken shot, and it is unbelievable. The tracking is insane. We're like switching between going off in the sky and following characters and moments of dialogue, and the most in I don't want to say anything because like some of the things that happen in this tracking shot are unbelievable, and I was just so captivated by everything that he puts on screen and his interpretations of what dreams are and what um filmmaking means to him and movies, because it plays such an important role in this film, and I would highly recommend it. Came out in 2018, and I just was completely blown away. It's a really incredible film.
Nice. My number 3 is another Catherine Bigelow film, but it's Strange Days with Ralph Fiennes in the lead. I thought this was a great film. I know it's kind of like an American Giallo. I kind of thought 'cause it was gonna like there's like a mystery with like the police involved, and it's very colorful with neon lights and stuff, and like very psychosexual. So I kind of linked that. It's a future. It's as it's turning to the year 2000, so it's like all that like Y2K of like the world ending and stuff. It came out in '95, so it was a kind of bit before that. I guess it was kind of ahead of its time, but it's this like weird, like almost cyberpunk world where people are using like virtual reality to escape into like memories that they can take from like people. So it deals with like if someone dies, there'll be like a virtual reality where they can jump in and like experience them like dying. And it's all just like the scenes of the virtual reality are so cool. Like it goes into this like Nickel Boys like esque POV sequence, and the set pieces that they do in the first person are just so incredible. I think Catherine Bigelow is like she does it in Point Break as well with her POV sequences and her action set pieces. Just in general, I think she's such an incredible action filmmaker, and I wish she would, or I wish she had went back to it because I think she's in her 70s now. I don't know if there'll be time for her to really to go back to these type of films because she's kind of just stuck in making war films this whole century. But I wish that she could go back to this time when she was working with James Cameron because she was married to him at this time, and he wrote or he kind of like ghost wrote Point Break. I think he like done script rewrites, but he wasn't in the Writers Guild, so he never get credits for it. But Strange Days is like fully his story, so it's like another like really ahead of its time science fiction screenplay from Cameron. Again, just showing I think he's a great writer. And I think that's often the thing that people attack him from, that he's not a good writer somehow. But I think again, time and again, he's showed that he is always ahead of the game with his writing style, even if he's like primarily a great filmmaker. But yeah, it was an incredible partnership that they have, just from these two films. And I wish we got more of it. But yeah, I give that a 4 out of 5. Almost a 4.5.
Banger of a film, so good.
Yeah, it's on my watch list. I always thought it was Keanu Reeves whenever I glanced at that poster for some reason, but it's not.
It's because you're not used to seeing Ralph Fiennes with hair, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
really
weird
weird.
experience.
Angela Bassett's so good in that film. I need to rewatch it actually. It's
Yeah.
been a while. It's been a year and a half since I first watched it. Very good film.
My 2, it sounds intimidating when I describe it. It's a 1970s Czechoslovakian film. It's black and white. It's called Witch Hammer, but it is on Prime, so it's very accessible. And it's also, if you're aware of the Salem witch trials, or if you've seen a film like The Devils, it's very similar to that. It's quite straightforward. There's like dialogue that's questioning like faith and things like that. Faith's a big part of the film, and exploitative like bureaucracy and people in power wanting to basically use religious fear as an excuse to persecute people, and especially women. It's really nicely shot. It's really well edited. It's quite short. I think it's like an hour 25. If you want something like The Witch, for example, if you're into folklore like I am, that sort of thing. So I don't think there are enough films being made that are about that sort of thing. I think Eggers is really carrying at the minute. But this is more historically based than it is horror. It's not a horror film. The horror is like that it actually happened. There's no, all the supernatural elements are implied. It's more about like an abuse of power in a small village. Um, I won't say too much else, but I think even if you're not familiar with old foreign films, I think you could get enjoyment out of this just if you're interested in the subject matter. So yeah, I'd recommend that. I give it 4.5.
Nice. That is on my watch list as well. Wait, let me just get my notes up a second. So, right. My number 2 is a film called Demon Lover. Sorry. Directed by a French director called Olivier Assayas, who directed a film called Personal Shopper, actually, which I think is a really underrated film with Kristen Stewart in, which is really fantastic. But I thought this was like, you'll read the synopsis and you just go, "Oh my god!" And it is about a French and American media company battling over the rights of an anime porn site, and it is incredible. It has so much obsession over low quality images and a really interesting battle of control. It turns into like a Bond espionage thriller, a pretty dark one at that, and it's so hopeless, and its voyeurism is so cold-blooded in this film, and is ruthless, and there's so much disfigured imagery and blurred lines, and it says so much about 21st century like digital movement, and its ending is crazy, but I think it's one of like the quintessential examinations of 21st century digital culture, and the move into like 3D worlds, and as reality starts to fade between the two. And yeah, don't be put off by his title. It's absolutely incredible. Not his title, its synopsis, sorry, but yeah, ridiculous film in a way, but it is so good.
Who directed that?
Olivier Assayas. I'd seen Personal Shopper, and then I think I saw some like stills on this on Twitter, and I was like, yeah, this looks interesting on the sort of synopsis, and yeah, it's got Connie Nielsen and Chloe Sevigny in as well. Really, really fantastic film. Would recommend.
Nice. My number 2 was A Bright Summer Day by Edward Yang, which I think most people know now. He's definitely the most famous Taiwanese filmmaker. His films all over the Letterboxd. Well, 2 of his films. He's not got a huge filmography. Yi Yi and A Bright Summer's Day are both in the top 20 on Letterboxd. And yeah, I've been going through his filmography, and I think this was his 3rd feature film, I think. Yeah, it's in many ways a continuation of kind of the style that he had in his other work. But I think it all comes into this more kind of a more traditional package, because it is a coming of age film where it's not really it's a bit more traditional, but I think it's still very Edward Yang if you've seen his other films. Very strong formal filmmaking. I think he's a great director. Giving a 4-star to a 4-hour film, some people might think that's maybe disappointing. I don't know, but I think this really was a great film. A bit intimidating because of that runtime, but again, kind of like The Brutalist, I think it does kind of fly by. I was kind of missing the kind of feeling that you get. I think Brady Corbet talked about this, like with a long film, you kind of there is a sense to kind of liking the feeling of it feeling long, and there's been a big like journey, but kind of just with the structure of this and the kind of it's pretty low scale, and just a character study coming of age, so it doesn't have that usual like epic of a 4-hour film. It's very different compared to other films I've seen that are that long. But yeah, I think it really pairs well to that kind of more traditional coming of age structure with his filmmaking. Yeah, I would really recommend it, and I'm excited to see Yi. I think I'm probably going to try and watch that before the end of the month to see if that can become my number
Very
one.
good.
Yeah, like
I think it's his best film.
Yee and A Bright Summer Day. The only reason I've not watched them is because it'd be like a challenge for me to lock in. But I think I'd find it rewarding if I ever do. I've never like even put them on and tried, so maybe I could get straight into them. But yeah,
You should.
my number one. I can't believe you two tried watch party in this. Is A Woman Under the Influence. By
That was in the very early watch party days. I think it was like Will who recommended it or something.
I think it was you.
I would have
Me?
been Oscar. Oscar, you're
No, it
terrible.
wasn't.
I think so.
I get
I
slandered
feel like
for the films
I feel like you were
recommend
watching through the
that
top
we
100
watch.
and like recommended it.
Nah, surely not.
Like
Surely
a
not.
2.5 hour domestic drama. This is like one of the worst films you could pick. It's really like slow pace, slow burn. I really like films about like a deconstruction of family life and like the family unit. And Gina Rowlands is like probably top 5 favorite actors, to be honest, from the like 2 films I've seen. She's amazing in this. Her body language is so good. She's such like a physical actress. Yeah, that pairing just works so well with Cassavay and Rowlands. I need to explore more, but I think I said in my review this might be my favorite performance ever. I think I still think that after a couple of weeks. I've never seen someone play such a like layered, complex. She's like mentally ill, but it's because of her surroundings, not because she just is by default mentally ill. Like the people around her are putting more and more pressure on her to act the way she isn't naturally. It's not like the easiest watch. I don't think any Cassavay films are. You've got to be either into his very raw domestic style or not. It's not exactly like the most cinematic film either. But yeah, the writing's incredible. The performances are incredible. If you don't like it, like Ryan, I think you should watch it again in a more natural setting. Because I think you'd appreciate it more. But yeah, so definitely my favorite first watch so far this year.
Yeah, my
Nice.
journey with Cassavetes hasn't went well so far because we tried to watch Husbands as well on a separate watch party, which is just like 3 men in a dark room speaking for like half an hour, so we just turned it off.
I really need to watch some more Cassavetes. I am uneducated apart from.
I love him as an actor, but I've not loved his directing work so far. But yeah, no, but he was like the guy for like independent films in the 70s, so I do need to give him another chance.
Definitely. My number one pick, my favorite watch so far this year, is a Chinese film called A Touch of Sin, directed by an incredible director called Jia Zhangqi in 2013. Simply put, this film follows 4 independent stories set in modern China about random acts of violence. And Jia's whole kind of thing with Chinese movies is like this commentary on Chinese economic and societal state within class and the effects that it has on this kind of particular working class of China. And this film is incredible, and usually with these kind of like, I guess, anthology type films that kind of have links between them, I'm like some of them struggle to thematically link ideas between them and have them portrayed in an effective way. But I was blown away by this kind of continual economic cycle of violence. And it's the way of setting up extreme reactions that these people are having to even harsher treatments of themselves, but the violence of their reactions is kind of the forefront of the film. But in real fact, their treatment that they're receiving because of where they are in their work and the work, what it's doing to them. is kind of subtly kind of slipped in as the reason behind everything in a way, and it's kind of this endless line of violence between humans and humans and humans and animals as well. This like line of production between employers and employees, and he has such a vision that manages to spread across this whole landscape of China, across like I said, it's 4 separate stories, and he manages to bring them all together and unite these stories in such it has a good amount of ambiguity to it, but I think the extremity of its violence in this film is kind of the standout and the statement really, and yeah, it just completely blew me away, and it was one that I would recommend to anyone because it is really, really fantastic, and I had I've been having a great time watching his films.
Nice. What did you give that?
I gave that 4.5. Gave all these 4.5, but I think this is the one that I think could go up to a 5 on rewatch. That the film really blew me away. But yeah,
nice.
Well worth it.
My number 1 is Daniel already stole it, but it's Point Break. Because, like you said, we all watched it. I think honestly, Catherine Bigelow like completely like 180'd in my opinion of her this month, is because I'd seen The Hurt Locker, and she'd done a horror film, a vampire movie called Near Dark, which I didn't love either. But this was incredible. I think some of the greatest action set pieces in filmmaking of the 90s. Keanu Reeves he's got to be up there as like one of the greatest action stars of all time. Like that, in the 90s alone, he done Point Break, Speed, and The Matrix, and then you have John Wick on top of that. Like it's ridiculous levels of like action films he's in. And I don't think he usually gets thrown in those conversations. I don't think is like someone like Tom Cruise. I think he's up there. Yeah, and like Daniel was saying, like it's ridiculous the action stuff that they do in this. Like, they jump out of planes like for real. Like I think Patrick Swayze had to be banned from like base jumping because the insurance like was like too scared. But he would sneak up into the plane anyway and just do it. There's nobody really doing it like she was in the 90s anymore.
I need to watch it.
Yeah,
No,
I give that 4.5.
Carry On tried to do like a 90s action thing, but it was just awful. I thought, like
CGI car crash.
Yeah. We're not operating on like speed levels or Point Break levels anymore, and we need to go back to that.
No.
Just like simple action film with amazing set pieces and no like CG.
Yeah, it was really desperate to try and recreate that 90s magic, which I think it did at times, but it doesn't get anywhere near these films. But yeah, is that all of our watches for the week?
That is everything. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our 5 watches of pretty much the whole month rather than the week. And yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought of The Brutalist. Did you love it, or were you a bit mixed on it? Kind of a polarizing film, I'd guess. A lot of people are struggling with 2 different halves of the film. Yeah, I would like to know what you thought, so let us know. And we'll be back next week for, I think we're going to be doing some Oscar movies or something else completely.